Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Do you really want to go to Chicago? Do you want to stay in Chicago? Hi, Amy Jacobson here. Kristen McQuarrie in for Dan Proft today. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And I don't know if you watch Good Morning America, but Mayor Lightfoot was on the other day saying that this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. That's how she described her budget.
Well, it's a rare moment in part because we're coming out of the pandemic. I think we are very well positioned to recover from the last 18 months. We're seeing glimmers on the horizon that our economy is rebounding. But we also know that we can't truly recover unless we bring everyone with us, making sure that we don't leave anyone behind. So we've announced a very ambitious, I think, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, leveraging the ARP money that came from the federal government, adding to it, and enhancing investments in neighborhoods that really haven't seen the kind of investments that we're talking about in maybe a generation.
And here is the mayor at the budget address at City Hall.
We propose to do this without any new taxes, no reduction in city services, and no layoffs.
Is that a read my lips moment, Kristen McQuarrie?
No, I mean, I really think they can, because they've gotten this huge influx of federal money. It's like Christmas at City Hall. I mean, let me just give you a couple numbers, and we're going to need a mathematician who's listening to give. Tell me what the percentage.
Don't look at my.
I know.
You didn't tell me there's going to be math today.
I am not.
Right.
I am not going to try to do this in my head. But the budget that she proposed and that the council is likely to approve is $16.7 billion. 2 years ago, in 2019, the spending plan before Rahm Emanuel left office was $8.9 billion. So we went from $8.9 billion in spending to $16.7 billion in spending in 2 years. What
are we getting for it?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is continuous. If you go back to 2012, the spending of City Hall, like many governments, is way outpaces the cost of living. Keep throwing money at problems. Is it helping? Is it doing anything? No. And a lot of this windfall is because of all this COVID money that's getting sprinkled around. There's no way we'll ever really be able to trace where that money went or how it's getting spent. But
who's getting vacation homes?
Or who's getting vacation homes? How do you explain a jump in spending by that amount?
Well, with more on this, and one of the only aldermen who pushed back after her budget address, Alderman Anthony Beale, 9th Ward, good friend of the show. Good morning, Mr. Beale. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing this morning?
Good. So what is your biggest point of contention with this budget proposal?
Well, actually, just listening to you and Kristen, you guys are hitting it right on the head. We're spending money, like a drunken sailor. And when you look at all this money that's being spent, it's not sustainable. So, we have all this money. We're creating all these programs, but we're not creating a government that's sustainable going forward. So what happens next year when all this money runs out and then all these new people are being hired, all these new programs are being created, and then we don't have the money to fund them, then we're going to have a massive shortfall as far as funding because that art money is not there anymore. And so that's what I'm afraid of. And I think we're just creating all these programs, trying to appease certain people, and to spend all this money in 1 or 2 years is totally irresponsible.
And I think
when you look at
CPS is hiring teachers for what? We have less students than we've had in years past because they're just throwing money at people.
And again, it's not working. When you look at throwing money at these programs, creating programs, spending all this money, and when you look at this budget, there was nothing in this budget about we need to hire more police. When I say more police, just police that are in our budget. We budgeted for, a certain amount of police, 13,500. We're down right now, and probably by the end of the year, we're going to be down 1,600 police officers.
Whoa.
Nothing in this budget is addressing putting more officers on the street. When public safety right now is the number one crisis that we're dealing with in this city of Chicago. And if we don't address public safety, there will be no city of Chicago at the end of the day. And then we're going to be left holding the bag with all these billions of dollars of new programs and new initiatives, and we won't be able to sustain it. And, I'm just looking at, the physical structure of this city is not solid.
And am I wrong that there is still a property tax increase in this budget?
There's a $75 million property tax increase in this budget. My colleague saw fit last year to allow the administration to, bake in about $25 million annual in property taxes because some people just don't like voting for property taxes. I think that's our responsibility. I think that's what the people send us down to City Hall for, is to, be, physical stewards of the money. And so they voted to just have a automatic increase every year of property taxes. So no matter what happens, it's going to be a property tax increase no matter what, every single year. However, we have another $50 million on top of that is not part of that annual increase. And so, yes, there's still going to be a property tax increase. And, even though people think that this is a great budget, I think it's physically irresponsible.
How do you explain those numbers that I mentioned earlier, that the budget just 2 years ago was 8.9 and now we're almost double that? How do you explain that?
Well, let me give you a more staggering number. When I first became alderman back in 1999, my first budget was $4.3 billion.
Wow.
Okay, so $4.3 billion to $16.7. And when you look at it, how is Chicago going to sustain this with crime running rampant, lack of jobs? People are not, getting back. We will never recover until about 2025, 2026. Fully recover, because right now companies are still allowing people to work from home. Downtown is still not rolling like it should. And, so we will never fully recover, but yet we're still spending money. We're not, we don't have to spend this money, this art money until 2026. There's no rush to spend it all. My thing is, why not hold some of this money back? If we don't have to spend it until 2026, just hold some of it back. We're spending money to plant 75,000 trees. 73,000 are going to die because the city doesn't maintain them. They don't water them after they plant them. They plant them in the hope that they stay alive. And so it's just a perfect example of how we're going to spend all this money, and then it's not going to be sustainable going forward.
And it's just, does the city and state government, federal government, you name it, there's never an exercise that I can see in line-by-line spending to see what programs are working and what programs are not working. And if programs are working, great. Taxpayers were willing to spend that money. And I think about your the public safety, the cop house that you finally got, I think, out of committee. You had to fight for how many years to get $250,000 out of the city budget for something that probably has a lot of potential. And meanwhile,
well, let me just say, let me back up. That $250,000 came from corporate. It didn't come out of the city's budget, and it took me 2 years to get it passed, and it didn't cost the city a dime. There's no city money in that cop house. That is being funded solely by S.C. Johnson, a corporation that funds cop houses in Racine, Wisconsin. And I brought that idea to the city of Chicago, and they said that they would fund the first house for $250,000. And it took me 2 years to get that passed because the administration did not approve, because I guess just because it was me bringing that initiative to the council. 2 years to pass something that didn't cost taxpayers a dime.
Hey, Alderman, for those of us who know, what's a cop house?
A cop house is basically a community house, like a CAPS office in the community. We're going to buy a house in one of the most problem areas of my ward, and we're going to renovate this house. We're going to put the officers in it. We're going to have Sheriff Dart is going to have some officers in it, and the community will be able to go there, and we're going to work with the community. Each room is going to have a different theme. You may have a reading room. You may have a daycare room. You may have a video room. You may have, where the kids can learn how to, do different things. It just depends on what the community wants, and the community interacts with the police in and out of this house. Okay, so it gives presence in that community where we're having a lot of problems, and then the community is coming in and working with the police. And what that's going to do is just build relationships. And at the end of the day, when the problems subside in that particular area, we're going to sell that house to a low-income resident, and that low-income resident gets a fully rehabbed, fully renovated house, for very little cost. And then we take that money and we build another cop house someplace else where we're still having problems. at no cost to the city of Chicago.
Yeah, it's like a little outpost because you can't have
Yeah.
police everywhere. But they've tried to do measures like that where they try to entice public safety employees to actually live in some of these communities, and they'll subsidize the mortgage on the house. So we already have some of that in place. But here's an alderman trying to take a very crime-plagued block in Roseland, I believe, is where you have proposed this. And this is a program that could work. It makes sense. Why don't we have line-by-line accounting every year with some sort of a measurement stick to fund things that are actually working?
Well, I agree with you. And, the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going through the budget. But as you know, when you when you have a budget as big and as thick as the city of Chicago's budget, they try to hide a lot of things, and they put things, in line items. And unless you know how to dig in and know how to go through a budget, they can hide a whole lot of fluff in this budget. And that's what you're seeing right now. I mean, I can't tell you how many programs are being created out of this budget. How many people are being hired out of this budget?
Oh, yeah.
How are we hiring people right now in this climate when, after next year and that money runs out, those same people that are hired are going to be left, and we're going to have to lay them off. And it's going to take a year or two to get these programs going. And then by the time they get them going, they're going to have to get them laid off. So it just doesn't make sense to me, and it's very disturbing. But again, if it's a great budget for somebody who's saying, oh, we don't have to raise taxes, we don't have to do much because we have this windfall of money. Yeah, but when that windfall runs out, what happens then?
Yep. Savings. It's all about savings. All right, Alderman Anthony Beale, we're going to have to leave it there for today. But as always, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you so much, and you ladies keep the fight.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Alderman Beale, 9th Ward Alderman, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning